questions. I think like we'll spend some time and then we'll open the floor for the questions and queries. Mandatory question screen, I hope it's visible.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. Great. So cool. I may not be able to see if somebody has raised the hand. So guys, please feel free.
Hello.
Yes. Hello.
This is one of the unmuted ones.
Unmuted
You
one.
can continue.
All right, no worries. So as I was saying, I may not be able to see the hand. So please maybe drop your question in the chat box, or if it can be answered right away, please feel free to unmute and we can have the discussion going on. Topic-wise, GA4, there are multiple facets, right? I mean, there is architectural changes happening, the reporting, how does the implementation work, what was happening earlier, what is happening now, and eventually for the marketeers, majorly the audience creation part, what is it that is going to get impacted heavily is something that can be discussed. I have collected certain points that I felt like should be relevant in the discussion, and of course, I mean, may not get into much of a detail. We'll just try to skip all the points so that everybody has some understanding. Having said that, please feel free to like get in touch with me. I'll share my email ID, phone number as well. Of course, Teams is always there so that you can get in touch and then have the further discussions or the query resolution that we can definitely do. Brief history about Google Analytics. I mean, like how things have been happening in the past. Before Google Analytics was in place, to be honest, there used to be a new startup called Urchin. So this company basically came up with the concept they wanted to track the users coming on the website. And as a matter of fact, even in today's time, whenever we see UTM underscore source, UTM underscore medium, UTM underscore campaign, the UTM stands for Urchin Tracking Module, which is still in place. So they came up with the idea that we can add certain query parameters, which can eventually help us out to understand source of the user acquisition and then eventual analysis. So Google acquired Urchin somewhere in 2005 and then eventually rebranded it as Google Analytics, and the growth is exponential. 54 to 60% is what I read last time are the current websites in the world which are using Google Analytics. Second market leader would be Adobe Analytics, and then there are I guess hundreds of analytics platforms that have come up in the recent past. So Google eventually in 2011 they launched Google Analytics Premium version, which is supposedly a paid version for large scale customers, and the library was known as ga.js. Uh, the tracking mechanisms were different for websites, were different for mobile applications, which in 2016 they launched something called Universal Analytics, and the idea was to make the entire measurement protocol consistent across websites, app, or any internet connected devices. So they defined all the protocols for measuring the user behavior, and it was made consistent. That was, I think, one of the not the turning points, but you say a very important milestone in GA, because everything was getting consistent across all the data points. Secondly, somewhere in 2012, Google made BigQuery also publicly open, and the Universal Analytics data was getting stored into BigQuery, which enabled the data analysts and the machine learning folks to start working on the data. In 2018, we had seen global site tag coming in, and then eventually GA4, not even 2020, I would say, like back in 2019 itself, a lot of beta testing, etc., was happening in the market for understanding the GA4 analysis reports. Cool. So the architectural differences, as we were talking about, and I'm hoping that a lot of people on the call, like I hope you have seen some of the other reports coming from the. Anyone have any questions?
Guys, if you don't have a question, can you please go on mute?
Thanks, Megha. So I hope, I mean, you might have seen Universal Analytics, or GA3 as a lot of people are calling it now. So that's the earlier version of Google Analytics that was in place, and now we have GA4 that is coming up. Uh, the major difference I would call is in GA3 world or universal analytics world, the major scopes or the major buckets that Google had created was sessions, hits, users, and products. So people visiting your website used to be known as a session or website visits. User is the same user, and then every session used to have hits, which again like used to be bifurcated into page views and events, and events were further bifurcated into category, action, and label. A tree structured format is what we used to see. Uh, I have seen, I mean, like people are so accustomed to that reporting formats, those dimensions and metrics. So that is one reason, I mean, like people are finding it kind of, so everything is becoming new in terms of the reporting part. In GA4, we have only event and event parameters. That is the major, I would say, the main measurement block that Google has introduced. User, of course, continues to be there. Sessions, eventually they reintroduced the sessions as a metric into the GA4 functionality. But at core, it's the hits that we are collecting, or which is events and event parameter. And this tracking mechanism, as a matter of fact, it's in line with other analytics platforms also, be it Mixpanel, be it AppsFlyer, be it Branch. So all these tools I have seen, like they have been using event and event parameter kind of structure, and now that GA4 is also utilizing a similar structure. So where does it help is the measurement schemas. So earlier I remember we had to create two different schemas, one for the app, one for the web, because on web we were using Google Analytics, and app we will be using Google Analytics along with some other attribution platforms. But now with GA4, the schemas are going to be consistent across all the platforms. So that's a good thing because you have a similar nomenclature and taxonomy being used. Uh, so again, in the last session, which Abhishek was taking, I remember a lot of people are asking in terms of what are the differences, what are the features that are present, what are the features not present. So this is one list that we have, which talks about the differences between Universal Analytics GA360, which is a paid version of Universal Analytics, and GA4. Uh, so while the list continues, I think I'll just put some light on the part like where we have read in no. Uh, One of them is advanced analysis reports. So this functionality earlier was available only with Google Analytics 360, including BigQuery as well. That was a GA360 feature, and advanced analysis or explore functionality. We will spend some time eventually on that feature, but that's a very useful feature that I personally see. And I do remember back in 2016, 17, 18 time, Google was doing a lot of surveys in terms of understanding how people are using Google Analytics, what are their asks, what are the pain points. And a few of the things that were being called out was so people are finding Google Analytics dashboard more like an interactive PDFs or kind of complex dashboards. Every time they have to do any slice and dice of the data, uh, they will have to download the report and then do the analysis into Excel. Uh, Custom reports allowed the functionality, but then at the same time, like on the fly creating the reports, etc., that user experience was somewhere missing. Then machine learning asks have been increasing, like not just I would say Google Analytics, but everywhere people need the ML capability inside the tool, and that definitely is one thing that Google also listened. Uh, and of course, the activation part, be it in terms of audience activations or connections with the other Google platforms, that was also one of the major asks. And that's what Google has tried to address using GA4. They have enabled the advanced analysis or explore functionality with GA4 even for the free accounts. BigQuery data export, surprisingly, this is made available for free GA4 accounts, and I would strongly suggest that please, if you haven't linked your GA4 account with BigQuery, please do so. That will enable a lot of analysis that can be done. Uh, Moving ahead, we have the user data retention. Earlier was not a problem at all. Whereas in GA4, Google has introduced the limits on in terms of user data retentions, and I believe like that is more in line with the privacy regulations that have been that are being set up into at a global scale, be it Europe, US, or even the Asian markets. Uh, Custom events creation and modification is another very useful feature, which so what it allows us is basically inside UI is basically user interface. Let's not confuse UI with UA. UA is Universal Analytics version of Google Analytics, and UI is user interface, any user interface. So that is like without even going to GTM or Google Tag Manager, it allows us to modify certain events that are being reported into Google Analytics. So that's again one of the very useful feature that we have. Debug mode helps during the implementation phase. That's a good addition. And the enhanced measurements. So enhanced measurements, basically all the typically tracked events, like for example, page views, scrolls, the scroll tracking earlier we used to do using GTM. Now Google Analytics can do it on its own. The outbound clicks that are happening on the website. So this kind of commonly tracked events are automatically tracked using enhanced measurement, which is again another thing that they have added. Uh, what is still not there or people are looking forward to? So SFMC data integration, at least with free GA4, is not there. The plans, I am not sure, to be honest, in terms of the product pipeline that they have. Could it be made available for free GA4 accounts as well? But that is one thing. And of course, there are certain limitations, drawbacks that it has come up with, which we can eventually definitely go ahead with. Uh, so far, any queries, questions? Because this was one of the area that a lot of people are asking for, or we are good to go ahead. Cool. All right. So features again, I'm not sure like exactly how much because it's a large audience. So some folks, as you were discussing, might be very much familiar with these features. But in case you are feeling lost into the features, functionalities, and specifics, we will definitely have a high-level overview of the changes that we should expect, and eventually what are the notable features that at least I would suggest that you better be aware about, because a in terms of the data analysis it will help, and we should be expecting a lot of questions around it from the community as well. So few of the notable features. So the first one is the explore functionality that I was talking about, or the advanced analysis functionality that Google has enabled. We will do a demo of it in the demo section. Similar goes for BigQuery export also. Like what I'll do is I'll showcase how does the data look like. But to tell you in crisp, all the data that we see into GA4 reports, those are aggregated reports. Those aggregated reports, if we have to see the raw data, which is unsampled, which is in the individual event level format, uh, that we can definitely access using BigQuery. Of course, it's going to be a huge data, and we need to start writing queries to be in a position to analyze that data. BigQuery, we can use SQL to access that data and then start performing the analysis. Uh, but then again, like in market, since GA4 has started picking up, there have been a lot of tools that have been rolled out, which enables even the marketeers without the knowledge of SQL or Python or R to start doing slice and dice using BigQuery data. That can be done. And because BigQuery is a data warehouse, like you need not have to limit only GA4 data into BigQuery. You can link Google Ads, you can link your CRM data or any other data sources and put it into a single project, which can enable you to build those holistic views of users inside the single BigQuery project. So you will have analytics data coming in from GA4, marketing data, let's say coming in from Google Ads, your offline conversions data coming in from CRM, all under the same project. And then you can start building those holistic dashboards or explorations, etc., all at one place. And the benefit of BigQuery is because those are scripts, right? You can any day automate the entire query and analysis, which can eventually save a lot of time that is typically spent into analyze the data collection, analyzing it, and then eventually coming up with the insights. So that is again one thing that we will definitely see it slightly in detail. Automated insights and the predictive audience. So as we were discussing, the machine learning capability is something that is heavily asked in the market. So let's just do a quick walkthrough. Perfect. So this is a demo account of Google Analytics that Google has made it available. There is a Google merchandise shop. They have made the data available for public usage. So this is something that I would suggest, like you should also be able to access and then start having a look at all the reports that are being shown to the users. Typically, like reports pretty much similar what we used to see earlier. The new additions that, as I was talking about, one of them is the automated insights that are created. So every report, the home report talks about the insights that have been created automatically by Google. For example, Google Organic drove the most revenue during March 1st to 31st March for this particular website. And then you will have revenue by source medium as well as one of the reports, or organic search appeared into 80%. All these insights basically help us, I mean, have some starting points, have some hypothesis for further analysis, and that just expedite the entire analysis process that we typically have. We can anytime like view all the insights that it has created. And another important my 2 cents, keep having a look at these insights. So and if you don't find something useful, right? For example, revenue was $33,000, and I like suppose I think that this is a very obvious thing, and this is not an insight that I want to see into the dashboard. You can, of course, give a negative feedback. What happens is Google at its backend like is also learning your personal behavior for these insights, like, and then eventually it can personalize the insights being created for you, and that is again like is something that is connected with your email IDs. So it is kind of personalized views as well. So that is something I would suggest, like keep interacting with these insights so that it becomes more and more useful for you and your action of your area of action, so that you can directly start getting into hypothesis building and then build activations. All the data crunching, any extra, all is already happening at the back end. These insights not just on the home screen, but like let's say if I go to the report section, just a quick poll, not the poll, but so out of 163 people on the call, like how do I ask this? But can you maybe? I don't think we have poll. But is there anyone like who has never seen GA4 dashboard, GA4 platform, or is entirely new to GA4?
Yes, I am.
1, 2, 3. So I believe with going with the speed, I would want to extrapolate that number to let's say 30 people. What I would suggest is, let me after the call, what I'll do is I'll share some links with you. Those links basically will give you access to these demo accounts. Feel free to go through these reports, because uh, at first like you might find it slightly difficult, because now the reporting structure has changed, right? Earlier it was like very simple acquisition, behavior, and conversions. Now it's everything is clubbed under reports, where again like we have same acquisition, engagement, monetization, basically the e-commerce section that we used to see. But again, like I mean, at first go you might want to get hands-on, and that is something that I would suggest to do using these demo accounts that are available. You can because these are demo accounts publicly accessible, you can use this for so that's one thing I would strongly suggest doing. Also, Google has made the BigQuery data sets. All the people like coming in from data analysis background or who want to get into the data analysis space. I'll share these links also. As a matter of fact, like Google has given the detailed instructions in terms of how to access those data sets and how you can start writing the queries. So these links also I'll make sure that are available, and then you can start writing some of the other queries to come up with the analysis. So this should give a very good understanding of the underlying data that is getting stored, and b coming up with use cases. Definitely, I mean, and it's a good playground for learning SQL, because there is a lot of data, uh, not just GA, but a lot of other data sets are also publicly available, and you can start writing the queries right away. Cool. So these are the insights which are present, as I was saying, like not just on the home screen, but any report that you go to, you should see some or the other automatically generated insights being created. This kind of tab would always be there. And right now, because we were seeing revenue, but if I refresh the button again, like we can see a list of questions, pure English questions that anybody would want to understand. Uh, that from the data that is getting stored. So that is again one thing I feel like is something that should be explored as early as possible. And because what is happening is, if you don't see, there is a highly likely chance that your counterparts, the other POCs, are also going to look at these insights. And if you're not aware about it, definitely it's not a good impression that you would want to have in front of all the other business stakeholders. So this is one part, the automated insights, as I was saying, and the second is the predictive angle to it. So when we say predictive angle, uh, in the audiences that we create, and I will spend some more time on top of it, but then Google has allowed us to have the audiences where the prediction element is also being used. For example, we can create an audience which is more likely to make the purchase in next 7 days or in next 10 days. We can create an audience which is more likely to uninstall the app eventually within next 30 days or next 7 days. So earlier, all the audiences that we used to create were basis or were dependent on the historical data. But now that prediction part, which earlier like we have been doing, we are also doing currently as part of our data science projects. But then Google has also started giving out this functionality by default into GA4, which I believe again like is one step going ahead from creating our regular audiences that we typically generate. And the insights part also like is using machine learning algorithms internally. So more and more you interact with it, better outputs is what you should expect coming out of it. So any quick queries, questions before we move into the next part? Cool. All right. So the good side we have seen, but again, like I wouldn't call it the bad side of it, but there are always going to be some limitations or some important call outs, as I typically say, with every new change that is happening. And the other things that I felt like we have to keep in mind, or I would say I would want to like throw some light upon in terms of the limitations part. So one very important thing, and I typically see it, is the data API limitations. What it means is, so Google Analytics 3 or Universal Analytics used to have this core reporting APIs, and then we never had any limit in terms of how much data that we are pulling out. Of course, I mean there were certain project level API quotas, but that was that used to be typically enough for pulling out the huge amount of data that we used to pull. Now they have introduced the quota system for all the API, the data API that is in place, which using which we can pull the data out of Google Analytics. And those limitations are applicable not just for the API calls, uh, but let's say you have a Looker Studio or Data Studio, as it was previously known, dashboard being created, or you are using Power BI or QuickSight or Tableau or any other dashboard tools. Also, all these dashboards basically use these data APIs at its core, and hence all the limitations of data API are also applied for all the dashboards that are being reporting all these data points. Uh, and the moment those quotas are hit, all your requests will start getting sampled. Of course, I mean you will get to know that the data, uh, the sampling has been applied for the API call that you made or the report that you have pulled out. But again, I mean that is one major thing, or I would say uh, uh, a very different thing that we are observing in terms of pulling the reports. For the day-to-day analysis, it will not, or it may not create much of an impact. But the moment you are pulling out the data for the entire month, or let's say last 3 months, last 6 months. So during that time, you will start you will basically start uh, seeing a lot of data getting sampled the moment you pull that report out. Uh, I I mean, if you look into it or maybe make a simple Google search, you will also start seeing a lot of workarounds, or not the workarounds, but then what are the things that have to be taken care of. Let's say I'm creating a data studio dashboard. I should avoid adding more charts on a single screen, and maybe I make multiple pages so that I stop making simultaneous calls to Google Analytics, and then hence remain into that quota limit. So that's one area which is, I would suggest, like, be mindful about whenever we are building the further reports or future reports. And answer to that, like when we basically ask Google, I mean, like, if you do not allow me to pull 6 months data with the same age, then what's the use, like, of moving to the new tool? Basically, Google has made BigQuery available for GA4 data, and the answer is, for any custom analysis, any analysis which involves larger data range, we should be doing it using BigQuery. Is what the positioning is at this moment. Uh, this gives, again, one major call out is, uh, so you want to do some analysis for 6 months data, you have to do that using BigQuery. So A, your BigQuery should be linked with the GA4, and B, you will need SQL skills to write queries in BigQuery, which again, like, might be a constraint in some scenarios, or which might create an opportunity for some folks on the call. Uh, I'm seeing multiple startups coming in, startups, or I would say small tools, utility functionalities being rolled out in the market, which are being on top of the BigQuery data for typical marketing use cases. So allowing you to do simple drag and drop, and then it will create queries at the back end, and they will pull the data from BigQuery. So those kind of tools are being created. People are making it live, because at least for the initial 6 months to 1 year time, we definitely expect that there would be a lot of dependency on the BigQuery data for any long data range analysis that needs to happen. Cool. Another important thing is differences, the data deviations that we should expect. So the way metrics are calculated in Universal Analytics and GA4, like for example, users to begin with, differs slightly. So the number of users that we see into Universal Analytics dashboard, and the moment we migrate to GA4, the numbers are expected to be different because of the different calculation methods. I mean, of course, it won't be like 50% differences, etc. But plus minus 5% is something that we should expect to see. Uh, and again, the call out here is, get into the details, like understand why the difference is coming. If the difference is less than 5%, maybe like that might be okay. But if that difference is, let's say, more than 10%, more than 20%, I would strongly suggest to get a look into the entire implementation from your GI experts that are there on the team. Uh, Another, for marketing teams, the new channel definitions is again a very confusing thing that at least I'm seeing in different marketing teams. So earlier we used to have the default channels like organic, uh, the paid channel, email, direct channel, etc. And the definitions were heavily dependent on the value of UTM underscore medium and the value of UTM underscore source. The new channel definitions in GA4 that Google has rolled out, there are multiple parameters that it is checking. It is also looking at campaign names in some scenarios. Uh, so, for example, your campaign name has SHOP shop as a single term. You might see a different channel altogether being tagged to it, whereas your source medium could be different. So, this kind of differences in the rules that are in place, again, like, it can create some confusion in the teams. So as a workaround or the solution, I would suggest is uh, sprint both the rules. There is a good table that Google has rolled out, the older calculation methods, the newer calculation methods. Just print both the rule tables and then have them stick it somewhere in the office or wherever you work in the initial period at least. And second is, let's say you have BigQuery access, then you can recreate your own report. So that flexibility BigQuery always provides. Or even in GA4 custom channel grouping, if it is allowed, you should be able to do it by using your own definitions. Having said that, uh, expect to see some drastic differences in the numbers when you look at the channel reports. So that's again one of the important call out. And other thing is, this goes more in terms of, I would say, the go to market for GA4, and not just us, but like the entire market is in the same boat. So the entire business teams, marketing teams, they're used to earlier ways of reporting, earlier metrics. I remember bounce rate or even the shopping behavior report that are there into universal analytics. So people are kind of used to that. Even when we say shopping behavior, uh, it's very easy for someone to understand, okay, what's the conversion rate, let's say from PDP to add to cart. So PDP is product detail page, like all of us know. But in GA4, the product is known as item, and we have select item for product click, item view underscore item for the product selection or product PDP views that we used to see. So point is, like, there are some slight differences between the metrics that are being reported and the report functionality. So let me just show that to you visually. So these are the e-commerce purchases that we have. And if you see items viewed by item name over time is how it is being written. Same goes for the shopping or product wise items viewed, added to cart, items purchased. I can of course see it by item category or item brand. So these are some slight changes that one I would suggest like be aware of. And the non-technical folks or people like who have been relying on pre-configured dashboards, they might find it slightly difficult to cope up with the newer things. Uh, and one call out again, the product analytics people are, in my experience, I have seen like they are liking the GA4 really well. A, because there is a lot of control. The moment you have BigQuery data, we can do any kind of slice and dice because you can write your own queries. And B, it is in line with other product analytics platforms that are there in the market. So educating your team members also is much easier for product analytics team as compared to the marketing teams is what we are observing. Cool. So before we do the demo for Explore and the BigQuery, GA4 audiences is again one thing that is very important for the marketing teams. Um, the key benefits or the differences is what we have tried to call out here, and I'll basis, I mean, the interest or basis the questions. If somebody has any question, like we can discuss at least one thing like in detail. But just to give a quick walkthrough, uh, the advanced configuration capabilities. So basically, it allows us to create audiences basis number of combinations that we can see. So this is a demo account, so I may not be able to create an audience, but this is one sample test account that we had created. So if I click on new audience, so if you see, I can, so I am being like, I have this pre-configured audiences of recently active users or purchasers, etc. Then there are templates also available by demographics technology acquisition, which is kind of in line with the earlier flow. Then there is this prediction angle as well, like we were talking about, because this is a test account, so there are no users or there is no activity. But likely purchasers, predicted 28-day top spenders, this kind of audiences, I would suggest you can definitely try out. If I want to create a new custom audience, I can create this audience. For example, I select uh, some event, like it's a conversion event. I can keep on adding the conditions. I can see, I can add these filters, etc., which is in line with the earlier flow. It's just that it's made more intuitive in nature. And at the same time, as I keep on adding these conditions in real time, I can see the audience size also, which is like in line with how we create things in Google Ads or DV360. So the moment I add the filter, the entire audience size will in real time will keep on getting updated. So I know like how many people lie into this particular set of rules. And then I can create the audience. I can, of course, it's a dynamic audience. This will basically keep on getting updated into Google Ads where I have linked the things. It also enables me to build cross-device audiences because we are tracking both web as well as app traffic into the same GA4 analytics platform. So I can create an audience, let's say people who uh, first visited on website and then have opened the app 3 times on the same day. If I want to create that kind of audience, I can definitely do that. Uh, the audience size in real time we have seen, uh, the centralized audience management. So again, this is one important part. Earlier we were able to see the audiences, or we were able to link only Google Ads for the free Google Analytics at least. But now with GA4 we can link it with DV360, we can link it with Google Ads as well. We can also link it with search ads 360 products. So basically this allows the audience activations across the platforms, and also at one center, basically like you have analysis of all these audiences for website behavior or app behavior that we need to do. Predictive perspective we have seen, and also the ready-made audiences. Again, this is one more observation that I have is a lot of things are already provided to people. So one is the audiences that we typically see. Then we have this explore functionality. Like the next part is demo itself. So I'll spend some time on the explore as well. So this is the advanced analytics or explore functionality, which allows us to create any analysis on the fly. Like for example, I want to see so city-wise active users have been like I'm saying, and I want to like, create the pivot table like I want it by gender. I can simply drag and drop and then create this analysis. Okay, so this is test account, so nothing is happening. Let me go back to the demo account that Google has provided. So we should see some data as well. Here also there are multiple templates that have been made available. The funnel exploration, path explorations, the use cases by acquisition user behavior, or even by industries like e-commerce reports or gaming reports. And the freeform functionality that we were seeing allows us to simply drag and drop the dimensions and metrics to see different data points. So right now we have city-wise, device category-wise active users. Let's say I do not want device category, I want gender-wise. I can simply drag and drop, and then entire report is created on the fly. Uh, this is important or helpful in two ways. One is the quicker analysis capability. You don't have to download the data and then do the analysis. That's again like one thing. And second is if you have to run the same analysis using BigQuery, in that case you would end up paying for the BigQuery computations at the backend. So I would suggest the first level of analysis or first level of exploration, better to do it using explore functionality because we don't have to pay for it separately. And once we are able to build some hypothesis, we can of course use BigQuery to cross-validate those hypotheses before we actually conclude on the next action items. So this is again something that is typically heavily used by the folks, and one thing that I feel one should know about. And let's have a look at BigQuery data. So this is again a demo data. I'll share the links after the call ends. This is how the data is stored into BigQuery. So this one row that we are seeing is actually a one row for one simple event that has been collected. We get the event timestamp, what was the event name, what all other parameters were there with this event. The user ID, user sudo ID is nothing. So this is same to the GA client ID we used to have. Now it is being known as user sudo ID in case of the GA4. And all other parameters, what was the browser, what was it, the user's first touch timestamp, uh, the device category, mobile brand name, mobile model names, etc. All this information is made available for every single hit that gets tracked along from the user journey. And the schema also, like if you have a look, these are all the parameters that are getting tracked. Uh, in case we want to run any analysis, I can, let's say, start writing the queries. For example, event name and count of one as events. moment I run the query, now power of BigQuery again, like it is well known, like we are able to process terabytes of data, petabytes of data in few, I would say, seconds to minutes at max, and that again like enables faster data analysis because the data is stored very optimally. BigQuery is made for faster computations, so we can get all the type of analysis, etc. Because you are writing over your own queries, you are not limited by the UI limitations or constraints as well. Cool. You can reach out to me. I have mentioned the mail, mobile number, LinkedIn ID. You can also reach out on Teams. I'm always available. We have a small quiz. Basically, what we can do is I have the link, but I think like first let us take the questions. I'll drop the link for that quiz like somewhere around 6 p.m. Submit the questions, submit your answers by 6:15. Uh, and then we will have the scoring mechanism in place. Of course, the correct answers, and in case of ties, the first person to submit those answers would basically get the higher point. So the point system again like will depend on both time to submit the quiz and the correct answers that you have. Submit it before 6:15 so that uh, I mean like we have a fair assessment being done. Cool. I think that is pretty much from my end. Open to queries, questions.
Hey Pankaj, Aditya here.
Yeah.
First of all, great session. Thank you so much for this. But I just had a quick query. Is the tracking possible for brands that have both apps and web or website? Can the data be collected on one single dashboard for both app and web?
Yeah, that's the selling point of Google Analytics 4, that the data from both website and mobile applications would be reported into a single reporting platform. As a matter of fact, all these reports right that I'm seeing can come from both web and Android and iOS into a single dashboard. So these acquisition numbers, right? So the 70,000 users like would be coming in from both, and if I want them to be bifurcated, then and I will have to apply those filters like select only web users or Android users or iOS users. But GA4 is the best platform for tracking both website as well as app users into a single platform.
So hi Pankaj, Mukarram here.
Yeah.
Thank you again for this lovely session. Great insights. And my question has two parts to it. One, uh, who and how often will be dwelling time in BigQuery? Like, will BigQuery, uh, you know, should we all be going to BigQuery, getting the insights from there? Uh, will that be the scenario, or we can do away with whatever features we are getting from a typical GA4? And if we are going to go for BigQuery, then what will be the first steps if I'm new to BigQuery thing? So
So, to answer your first question, like I mean, should everyone go to BigQuery? Uh, I coming from the data side, like I would say yes. Everybody, it's good to have some basic knowledge of SQL and Python or R or any other scripting language that just expedite your entire analysis inside building process. Because earlier we were okay or good with Excel and that was sufficient because data used to be at max 50 MB. I remember when I graduated in back in 2011, 2013 time, I remember like we used to have 50 MB Excel at working on the client's projects, and we used to think like I'm working on a very huge Excel file. But today 50 MB is, I mean, you pull out one data, one report, and you will see 50 MB data being accessed or being worked upon. So the amount of data that amount of data has grown exponentially, and which may not be handled by Excel unless again Excel might come up with some newer architecture to handle that. But till that time, your data is going to be stored into this data warehouses like BigQuery, etc. So if you can write the queries, nothing like it. But to answer your question, GA for user functionality, right, or the user interface should answer 90-95% of the questions, the typical questions that we have in terms of what is the number of users I'm getting from this particular campaign, the conversions, the explore functionality. Don't ask you to write BigQuery. You can simply do drag and drop. But
Right.
again, this is all the aggregated data that you are working on.
Right.
If you can write, you can always go and look into the actual data and start writing your own queries. And B, to answer your second question, as a starting point, what I would suggest is uh, there are multiple courses of SQL. What you have to do is just you learn concept, you apply it on this. So this demo data is available. You can start writing the queries. And as a
Uh-huh.
first step, what you can do is try to recreate this report. Like for example, this report, right? City-wise, device category-wise users.
Uh-huh.
Try to recreate this report into BigQuery, and that will give you a good practice of how do we basically traverse through this huge data that is getting collected into BQ. But it's something that I would suggest you might want to take it on priority.
Sure. Thank you so much, Pankaj.
Thank you. Any other query or question, or should we? Ashutosh has raised his hand.
Yeah, guys, you can ask the questions because I think there's so many to figure out.
Cool. I think.
Hi Pankaj,
Sorry.
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Ashutosh is not asking the question. I would take the opportunity. Thanks for the session, by the way. It was really informative. Just want to ask us that. So in back in GA 360, we had more complex reports. Like we had multiple events, multiple matrices to a
Mhm.
custom report. Right, let's say 10 to 15 different matrices that we wanted to track through a report, and then we compile it through Google Ads. So you say that we can get the data from Google Ads to BigQuery as well as from the GA4, right? So will it be able to capture all those events and all those different matrices at the same time? I mean, how would that query work? Would it be a long query to run for those complex matrices to get into the one single report to gauge the performance?
Can you give me an example or something maybe like that?
So let's say in GA360, I have a custom report in which I try to track session and then users and then different multiple stages of my journey,
Mhm.
add to cart, and then so forth and so on. Let's say 5 or 6 steps of the app and web both. So would it be possible through a big query to get all those details with a single query, or would it be a multi-query thing that we need to do to get this?
Well, can we do that? I mean, of course, we can do that. Just that what will happen is if all your dimensions and metrics are having similar scope, you can write it in a single select statement. If that is not the case, uh, I assume that date is what is going to be your uh, row identifier for all these metrics that you
Yeah.
are reporting. So then what you can do is accordingly structure your query, right? You can have uh, multiple temporary tables being created, and then you query those multiple temporary tables to have that one single row of all the metrics that are coming in. Uh, what you can do is, I mean, write one single query. Like it would be a long query, no hurry or no issues into it. But then what you can do is you can schedule that query into BQ. So the moment you schedule any query, like for example, this query, right, that I have written, and let's say I want this data to be reported on a daily basis, or
Hmm.
I want this things to be reported on every day, I can always schedule this query to run daily. So I can save this data into a separate BigQuery table. That's one good thing. Or I can simply save this query, and then eventually I can schedule it to run on daily basis. So I can create a new scheduled query. So what will happen in the backend? And this is what we do for even for Ads Data Hub, the other product that we work on, is we write the queries. Sometimes they are complicated, sometimes they are very straightforward. But once the query is validated, then we eventually schedule it to run on every week basis. So what happens is the data automatically gets into BigQuery. Scheduled query will automatically run all my data transformations, and it will create those intermediate temporary tables that I need, which will be linked with Looker Studio. And Looker Studio will every 12 hours, it is again refreshing the data from BigQuery.
Mm-hmm.
That way, what happens is the collection, transformation, storage, and visualization. And Looker Studio also allows me to schedule the emails. So reporting or updating all my other stakeholders. So this entire pipeline now is automated, and it enables us to then, like, you will have like 2-3 people, but addressing 100 reports maybe on a daily basis for all the 50 plus clients that you have. So those kind of enhancement, efficiency building definitely is something that can be done.
Okay, one small follow-up question with this. So there are some few events that you cannot get with another event. Let's say, for example, with date you cannot get transaction ID in traditional GA. So if I write a query for GA4 to get the same data, which I was not able to get in the GA360, would GA4 provide the data through BigQuery, or it will give an error and let us know that it's not possible, or how it works?
I mean, if so as a basic rule of thumb, if the data is present into BigQuery, you can pull it out. That shouldn't be a problem.
Any combination, right?
Which metric you are talking about?
So let's say I wanted to take the transaction IDs channel wise. So direct, organic, and maybe Google CPC, Facebook CPC, and everything date wise. It does not come that way in GA360. It says that you can just get the transaction IDs, or you can get date and channels. So this complication that we have in 360, does it carry forward to GA4, or is there a solution for that?
So GA4 user interface will have the similar combination limitations that are there. In BigQuery, because you are writing the query, right? So you can write the query and get the data in any possible combinations that you want. Having said that, the combination limitations sometimes are added more from the reporting principles. Like for example, like in GA3, we used to have this. I have seen like a lot of publisher people like creating this report that page-wise number of sessions. Now, session is a higher level metric, page is a lower level dimension, right? So it wouldn't actually make sense to create this kind of a report. While you technically you can, I mean, like there would be some numbers that you will see, but that is something that should be avoided. So if your data is pre-structured, I think it's better to have level-wise reports being created separately, because that would make more sense, and your eventual analysis will be much better. The best part, I think, like way is just ask the question, like what is it that I want to answer, and accordingly then you can structure your entire data analysis query for the larger data sets.
All right, thanks.
Sure. I have shared the quiz link, so guys, please feel free to visit the quiz. This is what you should see the moment you visit the link. We have certain questions that have been listed. Feel free to answer it and submit your answers before 6:15 so that we can eventually go for the assessment. Yeah, open to questions again.
Yeah, I have a question, Pankaj.
Yeah.
Can we link GA4 to DV360?
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's a question on the quiz. I'm kidding. Please don't answer that.
Faraz
I
was
never
telling, so
thought
this
this.
is Faraz, Pankaj, and we were just looking at the participants and we were like, यार बातें के आगे हम कहाँ से जीतेंगे कुछ भी इसमें. So this is fantastic.
I never thought this. I mean, like that this can also happen that I myself start answering the questions.
Sorry, guys. Any serious questions? I'm sorry, Pankaj.
I don't think so, Pankaj. There are any set of questions.
All right, sounds great. Thank you. Thanks for your time and thanks, Megha. Thanks everyone for the opportunity. I hope this is useful. For any further detailed discussions, queries, questions, happy to connect anytime.
Thank you so much, Pankaj. This was really helpful. And I think any questions, anybody, I think people now know whom to connect. So thank you so much.
Sure.